Hi. My name is Meiken Hansen, and I'm a PhD student from DTU Management. And my supervisors are Mads Borup and Bettina Hauge, also from DTU Management Engineering. And the paper that I am presenting here today, or the material, is from a paper that I am working with together with Bettina Hauge. And the work, or the data for this paper, is coming from the Insero lab project. And the title is Description of Smart Grid Technology. A short outline of the presentation I will give. I will start with giving a theoretical departure for my project, whereafter I will give a short introduction of the families, what kind of people they are, and the users in this project. Whereafter I will go to the objectives of my study here, and then I will go through briefly the results of the energy visualization that we were looking into, and also the results from the remote control that we were investigating. Finally, there will be some concluding remarks, and hopefully there will be some questions and comments from the audience. Yeah. The research that I will present here today is theoretically based in the field of science and technology studies, which is an academic field that emerged when scientists, historians, and sociologists of science began to investigate the relationship between society, scientific knowledge, and technological systems. So in sum, the STS explores what difference it makes to human societies that we collectively are producers and users of science and technology. So science and technology studies is an interdisciplinary field that examines the creation, development, and consequences of science and technology in the cultural, historical, and social context. And specifically, my theoretical departure is based in the concept of script that is coined by Madeleine Krisch in 1992, where she investigates the technologies, like how designers, they inscribe into technologies, functions, and by doing this, they're trying to predict what the consumers would like to have in the future. So they try to predict the future, the designers, and assign the product with functions that they believe that the users would want to have and use. And all technologies, they have a script, and in this case, a script can be defined as an action-oriented suggestion for use. And this also implies a sort of a type of an ideal user that the designers try to apply in the products, a certain way that they want consumers to act, or users to act. So once a product or an object is available to users and has left the hands of the designers, the users, they do an action called a description. It's their way of sort of using the product in their own ways and sort of making it fit into their own world. So the users, when doing this, they need to be able to recover a coherent program of action from this new technology, and they need to make sense of it. So, and this is might be called like an interpretation of the script of the technology, and when they are descripting the product. And in this presentation, I'm focusing on the consumers that are descripting these technologies that they meet in their houses through the Insero Lab project. And the inscription from the designer side, I plan to investigate in other work. So here you can see pictures of the families that are participating in the project. As you can see, they belong to different age groups, and they have different educational backgrounds. The majority of the adults, they have like a mid-long or a short education. Among the adults, there's one engineer, a female engineer, and there's one programmer. And the crowd is not particularly technical, which is an important thing to state when testing this type of technologies. And the duration of the project, where the families are going to be involved, is set to be approximately 2 years. And the families, they keep the heat pump and the solar cells after the project ends, whereas the EV is leased, so they can return it or they can keep using it, but then they have to pay a higher fee. And they have gotten the technologies installed since approximately December 2013, right? Yeah. And some of these families, they had solar cells prior to the project. And the ones that did that, they were on the old agreement, meaning that they get a set amount of money, kroners, for the amount of electricity that they sell. And the rest of the families, they belong to the new accounting system, where the consumption of the electricity from the solar cells is free in the hours that they are producing, but if they do not consume the electricity, it just goes to the grid lost. So they have to produce quite a lot of electricity before they start making money from it. The empirical data that was collected for this study was collected by the use of qualitative ethnographic study methods. Specifically, we went out and made the semi-structured interviews with the families, one interview per family. And the interviews lasted between 40 and 80 minutes each, and they were carried out approximately 5 months after the installation of the technologies. Now, of course, some technologies, there were some problems with some technologies in some houses, but yeah, it's approximately. And then all the interviews, they have been transcribed and so encoded in Atlas TI based on a grounded approach. But in this paper, we wanted to investigate two concepts from the live lab. The first one is the visualization equipment that the consumers were presented to, and secondly, the notion of remote control. So in relation to the first concept, the one of the energy visualization equipment, we wanted to investigate how the participants were descripting the e-butler in relation to the other displays that they had and that were available in their households through the other technologies, like from the smart meters, for example. But also in this, in relation to this, we wanted to investigate the barriers the e-butler was facing if it was to become a product that was going to be used. So the research question that we wanted to answer is how do participants descript the energy visualization equipment with a special focus on the identified problems that might become barriers. Now I should say here that the version of e-butler that was being tested was the preliminary version, or the first version. So some plans of changes have been, or some changes have been planned, but Jonas will tell you more about that later. And in relation to remote control, we were interested to investigate the possible barriers towards remote control. So the main research question we wanted to answer was, what do the participants expect from living with remote control? And again, here was a focus on possible conflict areas towards it that might hinder a transition where the consumers were living with it. Now, the Insero Live Lab webpage informs that this home automation system, e-butler, presents data collected from the house, which gives a good overview of the consumption and understanding of the energy consumption. So also this system makes it possible for the consumers to set when to consume, to charge their cars or to consume electricity through the heat pump. So the e-butler, the home automation system, should give the users information about their own energy system, specifically within the two main areas of using electricity, which is the car and the heat pump in this case. And the other technologies, or like the main technologies that we were interested in this investigation that included displays, there were the technologies of heat pumps and the inverter from the solar cells, and lastly, the smart meter. So in investigating energy visualization, specifically e-butler and in relation to the other displays, we found some issues that made the users quite uneasy with the use of it. One issue that the users found quite problematic was the difference between values that they found on their displays and the e-butler. So the values on the inverter, for example, would not be completely the same as an e-butler. So, and by seeing this, that they could not completely see the same numbers, they became quite skeptic. As the photo shows, that is actually one of the reasons that one does not bother acquaint oneself with it, with eButler, because I think that is the instruction that we've gotten to use eButler. It says what you can read, right? That you can see. The numbers are there, but if the numbers do not match, then do you think it's even for our household? Or so another problematic issue that came up many times was the fact that they had to log on to a profile in order to see the program. So the action of actually going to a PC and log on to see the eButler was too much for many people. So as one family stated, they could not find time in their everyday life to go upstairs, log on to a computer to see the program. So because when they were in their living room and in the kitchen, they would have an iPad to go on and do the easy searching on the internet or whatever they were checking. And since it was not compatible, they just didn't use it. And this was also interesting because even families that were very interested in the consumption had had this reason for not using the program. So because they had assigned the tasks to the PC of being boring tasks like paying bills and stuff like that, and kept just a big stationary computer in the room for doing boring tasks, they did not use eButler because they could not use it on the iPad that they would use for checking fast things. And the families that did use eButler used it more as an add-on information to the information that they would get through the displays anyways, like the heat pump and the solar cells and the smart meter. As one man, he was talking about this. He had this ritual every evening. He would go around in the house and he would note all the figures from all the displays, and then once a week he would go and apply them in a spreadsheet. And that once a week, when he was doing that, he would also go into eButler and read the numbers from there, and then he would look at the difference between the numbers. So it would become more sort of add-on information to information that they would try to get through the displays anyway. But the displays that were available at all times, they were used more frequently than the home automation systems. And this seems to be because they could check them on their way to something else. They would be in their everyday lives. Like one man, for example, would check the display whenever he was smoking because it was easy. He would go outside and he would look at the display while he was smoking his cigarette. And also other actions like going to the car, they would pass the smart meter and they would, look what was going on, and that was it. So this accessibility seemed quite important. There was an issue with the script of the technologies not allowing the consumers to control the consumption of the produced electricity at the level that they wished for. Occupants that did not sort of have time or resources to manage their consumption according to the sun shining, meaning they could not use it when the energy was there, they were frustrated when they were confronted with the visualization equipment. So, because they would see how much electricity they just delivered, and it would remind them of how much energy they were just giving away to the electricity company. So for some families, this was quite frustrating, that this script of the technology does not allow them to have the control. So, for example, a man in a very busy family stated, "This is how much we produce," looking at eButler, "how much we deliver to the energy company is far too much. Look, some days we deliver 22 kilowatts. This is really stupid. We can also see how much we use." But this was like some families. Other families used it opposite, because they had the possibilities to use all the energy when it was being produced. They could use the electricity when it was being produced. As one family, a woman was explaining how she enjoyed, or they as a family were enjoying plugging everything to the grid when the sun was shining, and then going to the meter and being really happy if it was set 0, so that they could have all this consumption for free, like vacuum cleaning and using all this, charging the car and etc. So it was going both ways. So When the families, they had the time and resources to change their consumption according to the solar production, they would really be enjoying looking at the displays, where the families that did not have time and resources were frustrating to see the evidence of how much electricity they were just giving away. So the lack of control was quite frustrating for some people and did not really motivate them into looking at these technologies, with the visualization equipment. So the Insero Live Lab project has declared that they will remotely control the charging of the EV and the use of electricity for the heat pump. So they will remotely control the devices that use a lot of electricity. And they will do that according to predefined settings by the consumers. They will set how much temperature they would prefer to have in their house, but also when they can charge the cars and etc. So at the time when these interviews were being collected, they had not been remotely controlled yet, the technologies. So this was more an investigation of how they would feel, were thinking about the future where remote control could be applied in their homes. And for some of the families, the production of energy seemed to be sort of connected to a wish for control in general. As one woman says, the more the devices get controlled from above, the less it becomes something that we feel a sense of ownership of. And there's something about having these devices yourself. I think there's something in it, that there are some technologies that you have and that you can provide yourself with energy and that you would like to control how it should work. Other families, they stated the importance of optimizing according to their production before the state of the grid. So, and if that would be the case, that they could do that, then they were very fine with it. So depending on also the placement of the solar cells, there was depending on when they had a lot of solar, when the solar cells were giving electricity. So they were very sort of worried about being able to to be able to put the electricity to the car when they needed it, and not to charge the car in the middle of the night, because then they would have to pay for electricity, which would be opposite when they had sunlight on their solar cells. So some of the contestants, they were mentioning the sort of optimizing according to their production as being like far more important than towards the health of, like, to avoiding peak hours, for example. And some of these things were also quite frustrating. For example, one family, they had noticed that their heat pump was running in the middle of the night, and they really did not like that, because then they were spending electricity when they had to pay for it, and they were just sleeping, so it didn't make any sense. So, yeah. And the families without the capacity to optimize according to the solar cells, because of like work and children, they had a wish to sort of control where the production of the electricity could be used, sort of to contribute to the community. So, as one man said, the most awesome thing that we could do here is to collect it up, so that many units together save the energy, so that the whole city could contribute to heating up a pool where the energy was being used to heat up water that was going to be heating anyway. So they seem to have a sort of very good feeling of wanting to contribute to a community by the sense of the control. An issue that discovered as a possible barrier, at least in the beginning, in the early phase process of remote control, was the focus of sort of the state of technologies. For example, one participant, one man, found it very difficult not to plug the car in immediately after use, because that was his habit. He always did that to his mobile phone and wanted to do the same with his car. So this, and just this sort of having the security of always having 150 kilometers in the car. So he didn't really, I mean, there was sort of like a difficult process for him to sort of accept that somebody else was going to decide how much was going to be when he should charge the car. So, and another man, he was very worried about the state of his heat pump. Since he had problems in the beginning phase, he sort of didn't trust that by turning it on and off would not harm it. So sort of, since he didn't have any backup way of heating his house, it was a very delicate subject. So he didn't want to yeah, so this sort of fright of things going wrong. So summing up the main findings from the question of how do participants descript the energy visualization equipment, with the focus on the identified challenges, there were several issues. The first one was related to the issue of comparing the values, that the values were not the same, which created a big distrust against the systems. And although they had been informed that this might be the problem, it still was a problem for them. Another issue was logging on to the PC that made people reluctant to use it, since there was a different, like people used the PC for different things. And also where the displays that were available at all times seemed to make the users more, use them more easily. And it seemed to support the habits from the people that were already very interested in their consumption to use it continuously. And the people that were not able to consume the produced energy, they felt very distressed when they were presented to the data of how much they were giving away. And they were feeling annoyed when they were confronted with all this electricity they were giving away for free. While the people that had the ability of using it, they felt very lucky and blessed when they saw that they didn't consume much. In relation to the remote control issue, we found that there might be a resistance against being controlled for some users, especially the users from the new solar cells agreement felt very strongly for optimizing according to their own production of electricity, and did not like to use electricity when they were not, like when they were sleeping, for example. And for some users, the state of the technology was very important, so there might be some trust issues in this relation. And yeah, because if the heating system weren't working, then if they did not have a backup, they might have some problems. Yeah. Thanks.